Right, you may think you're a geek because you like Call of Duty, you like Battlefield, and maybe even Arma 3. But today we're moving into the outback of geek country and hardcore flight simulator. With me today is Dackard, and the reason we're speaking English is because this gentleman is not from around here. He's from the great abroad. Not that great abroad, actually. Sweden. Not that far away. But he's one of the developers with the Digital Combat Simulator series, which is developed by Eagle Dynamics. And what is Digital Combat Simulator? Well, can you tell me about it, or should I? Because I've actually played this stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I just develop it. I don't know anything.
Yeah. No, Digital Combat Simulator, is a series of it's kind of an operating system which encompasses a lot of different flight simulators or study flight planes, right?
Yeah, modules. I guess you can call them
modules. Yeah. So there's like a combined arms, which is ground warfare, and there is so you can like buy modules and plug new planes in. And the first iconic plane they made was the A-10C. And that came out, 5 years ago? Or
2008.
2008, which is, 6 years already. And I played that like massively. I think I spent a year playing that. But, or learning to fly it actually, because it's very, very complicated. Yeah. These simulators are not for the faint of heart.
No, essentially the stated goal of the DCS franchise is to try to simulate every avionic or system component in the aircraft to the fullest extent possible. Of course, there are limits to this, and even in the DCS A10, where, for example, the IFF system is not fully modeled. But in general, that is a stated goal of the DCS ecosystem.
Yeah. So if you were, and you were from a developer called Leatherneck Simulations.
That's right.
Leatherneck.
It makes sense if you see our logo, I swear.
And you just made a plane? A
Yes.
Russian plane? Soviet plane, actually?
Correct. We have just modeled the MiG-21 BIS, which is the latest evolution of the MiG-21.
Okay, let's pretend I'm a potential buyer of this plane, and let's pretend the year is 1986, right?
Okay.
1986, and I'm a potential buyer, and you're an arms dealer trying to sell me this plane. How would you sell this MiG-21?
It's cheap. It's very cheap.
Cheap. That's a good argument.
It's fairly effective in large numbers, and with ground-controlled radar.
Yeah.
You can hang some bombs and stuff on it. It's not very effective at it, but you'll get there. It's very rugged, very easy to maintain. It's very simple in its construction and design. And it also is perhaps not in the flight envelope, but in the usability. It's not very... It won't kill you that easily. Some planes are worse, some planes are much better. It's not that good either, but you'll survive, likely, with some training.
I mean, I've spent 3 days trying to learn to fly this thing, and it's dangerous. We're talking a delta wing design?
Yes, that's correct.
It's like inherently very, very unstable, right?
Actually, it's inherently more stable, but it's very difficult to explain. It's
for instance, landing it, right?
Yes.
You have to land it at a very, very high speed.
Yes.
It seems like you're actually still flying when you hit the ground.
Yes. It takes some getting used to, but essentially, yes. The delta wing has some very unique properties, and if you do fly the MiG-21, you really have to kind of take those into account, because the aircraft will kill you otherwise. But in general, it's quite a maneuverable aircraft if you learn to fly it in the way it's meant to be flown, essentially.
And then there's the whole Soviet thing, because let's face it, when you're used to flying Western aircraft,
yep.
Getting used to a Russian cockpit or Soviet cockpit is like very, very difficult. For me, it's very difficult.
Yes.
I'm not talking about the language, I'm talking about the way the whole thing is designed,
Pilot ergonomics, I don't know if I don't know why, but they are not the best in the MiG-21. And it seems that if they needed an extra function in the aircraft's cockpit, they just let's just put another switch in there, 3-way, 2-way, whatever we need, and there it goes. And the placement of the different components is not very logical a lot of the time as well, even though there are some guidelines in terms of where things are placed.
I must say though, I haven't flown a plane in the DCS series since the A10 that was so insanely charming, And I cannot put my finger on it, but there is something about this MiG that has charmed the pants off me, It's just, I don't know, maybe it's because it's such a storied aircraft, where you can really, you've seen this, you've heard about it so many times, and it's kind of part of history,
Yeah.
But then it still feels relevant.
Yeah.
It's not like flying a World War II plane where you got, okay, this is totally history, But
yeah, well, just a few years ago, MiG-21 wasn't flying against top-of-line aircraft like the F-15 and so on, and there's still countries that are actively using the MiG-21 today, like off the top of my head, Serbia, for example. So it is still a pretty relevant aircraft, even though in the DCS threat environment, all the other aircraft in DCS, it is quite outclassed in comparison to those.
Yeah. So let's talk about the radar. Just because that's like one of the things that I haven't seen in DCS before.
Yeah.
It's like this little yellow. There's like a little screen in the middle, and it's kind of blurry yellow.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to figure out how it works. You have to know where your target is to actually make it work, right?
It has a very narrow beam that looks upwards, so you can only see targets that are actually above your flight level, essentially, unless you turn on the low altitude mode where the antenna is tilted even further upwards. And we've also, of course, implemented the real features of the radar, like ground reflectance and cloud reflectance, which are likely the yellow smudges which you're seeing on the screen.
Yeah.
And that's simply the radar being reflected off clouds or ground. But it's very tricky to use, and the radar was actually meant to be used together with ground control intercept, which is essentially a ground controller which points you to your enemy, and you know where you point your nose, and you know where he is, essentially.
Yeah.
And without that, it's not very easy. You have AWACS in the current DCS environment, which is kind of the same, but still a little bit different. So it's definitely a challenge to use it.
So, Leatherneck Simulations. How many people is that?
4.
4 people?
4 people.
And how long did it take to make a plane like that?
Officially 4 years.
4 years?
Yes, but at one point we tossed everything out and we rebuilt the project from scratch. And that was roughly of January 2013. And that's where we rebuilt all the artwork. We rebuilt all the code. Essentially, I'd say maybe 5 to 10% of the aircraft is left since before that time.
Why did you scrap everything?
Because initially the MiG-21 was built for a different standard. It was, first of all, the artwork was in a completely different league, essentially. And also all the code was based in Lua, which is a programming system which is not that powerful. You can't do that much in it. And it also relied on something called the simple flight model. It did not have the advanced flight model that all the other DCS level aircraft now have.
Yeah, because you're part of that very small group of people who can make planes on that level.
Yes, we're very lucky to have...
So far there's the A10.
Yep.
The A10, the MiG, and the helicopter, the Huey.
And the Mi-8.
And the Mi-8.
Yeah. And the 2 World War II, Focke-Wulf 190 and...
Yeah, and the Mustang and the Focke-Wulf 190.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so that's 6 planes.
Yes. Not very many. Yeah, at least.
So what kind of... I mean, you must know like everything about that plane to make a simulation that deep. Where do you get your material?
I personally don't know everything. We do have Novak, who is an active duty MiG-21 pilot, and our lead programmer. So he essentially is both the subject matter expert and the lead programmer on the project. So it makes a lot of things a little bit easier.
Okay. So you have an active duty MiG pilot on the 4-man team.
Correct. That is correct.
That's seriously cool in that geeky warfare kind of cool. We like it.
Yeah,
okay, that's cool. And so you were working with Eagle Dynamics, right? This elusive semi-Russian, semi-American, semi-English flight simulation company. How did the contact with these guys? How did that happened?
The MiG-21 project was actually the first third-party project for DCS. It started, like I said, 4 years ago, roughly. And essentially, that's the former project leader who was with us at that point. He was actually the one who was in touch with them during that early stage. So essentially, I haven't been around since we actually first got in touch with them. But since then, you know, it's a fairly normal working relationship where we are partners in this partnership where we can both support each other and we can help develop modules which will also grow DCS World. And it's working very well so far. I'm very happy.
So you told me before we started the interview that you already had your next plane in the books. You're going to tell us what the plane is?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, you know? Okay.
I will tell you that we will very, very likely be creating a MiG-23, which a lot of people have been asking for.
Wow.
But it is not next.
It's not next?
It's not next.
Okay, because I had the flogger. I had it down here in my nose. Yeah, okay.
It's very, very likely, but it's not next. And I can say the aircraft is closely related to our studio name. That is
Wow.
all you're going to get.
I'm thinking the Marines. The Marine area? Okay, well, I'll leave you alone then about it. How do you reckon people use these incredibly advanced simulators? I mean, the MiG, the A-10, you know, these jet planes are incredibly complex. You know, that's just.
Right.
I mean, I spent a year learning to fly the A-10, I think. And when I finally mastered it, or thought I had mastered it, you know, I kind of was like, okay, that's it, you know. And I've always regretted since that I didn't fly more missions with all this knowledge of mine, you know. But for me, it was something about, you know, mastering this very, very complex thing. But how do you reckon people use these simulators? Do you have any like data or?
You know, we actually don't have any data, but if you're into that kind of section of gaming or that niche, you enjoy a certain type of gaming experience, and it's kind of similar to maybe something like doing milsim in Arma, or very difficult to find a lot of concrete examples which are kind of on the same level, but essentially you do enjoy the kind of realistic aspect of the gaming. And also a lot of our customers do enjoy the learning experience of actually learning the aircraft and learning its avionics, even to the smallest details. And this can actually bite us in the ass a couple of times. If we've implemented something wrong and people start digging through a real manual and they find something that is incorrect, and that is essentially what happens. So. I do think that demographic is our demographic is heavily tilted towards that area.
Okay.
Of individuals.
And I understand that you're very happy with sales. He's not going to tell us any numbers or anything, but I understand you're happy with the sales.
What I can say is that we are not going anywhere.
Okay.
We're here to stay. We are going to develop many more aircraft, I'd say. So
I think this means we can dismiss the threat of the impending doom of the flight simulation. Maybe we should.
I think it has been a little bit exaggerated, to be honest.
That's good to know.
Death of PC gaming, death of flight sims. Not happening.
You used to work with on the FSX scene before, right?
Yes, that's correct.
For some of the add-on developers.
Yeah, Milviz and Razband and Iris.
Milviz.
Yeah. That's correct.
I have their Beach Duchess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have that.
Cool. I didn't work on it. But
you didn't work on it?
It's good.
Which one did you work on?
Which one did I work on? Oh dear. I've worked on a lot that are actually unreleased because they actually have a large stable of aircraft which are not released. They're waiting for programmers to get busy with them.
And Iris, they're the ones doing military planes?
Yes, that's correct. I actually did the A-10 for them, so it's kind of.
Right, yeah. Well, the problem with military planes in the civilian flight simulators is, for me, you know, obviously, is that you can't blow stuff up.
Yeah.
It seems oddly...
At odds.
At odds. It seems like you're missing you're missing something, you know, when you're flying and so, yeah, right.
That is correct. There is something called TAC Pack coming, but it's still a little bit of a wrong environment for it. I recommend DCS World if you want to blow stuff up.
That's
Trust me.
obviously, but that's cool. So another thing I wondered was single player versus multiplayer, because on the forums it seems that everybody's talking multiplayer, all the time. And I'll admit I'm a single player guy. Maybe it's because I played MMOs for so long.
Yeah.
I was like, oh whoa, I can't deal with humanity anymore, and now I just need to do this for myself. And I once read that the IL2, someone from the IL2 community said that only 10% of the user base of Stumovik actually flew online. But that was a few years ago, before broadband connections and such. Do you have any impression of how that works?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the majority of players tend to play single player, actually, and the numbers we've seen do indicate that. And that might be a little bit surprising, but if you do think about it, it is a lot of work to get a group together where you can actually enjoy a multiplayer experience in the way you actually want to do it. Some solid, dependable people. But on the other hand, the multiplayer community is very important to us as developers as well. And it comes with a very unique set of challenges in terms of creating the aircraft itself. So the demographic is definitely skewed towards single player.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite mission?
Favorite mission?
Single player mission?
I don't think I do, actually. I do enjoy ship attack with the KH-66 Grom. You should try that out.
You should try that out. He says, I can barely land the thing. So sometimes I even crash when I take off. You're like, do it better. You accelerate too quickly, but like, whoa!
Practice makes perfect, I guess. Hopefully.
All right. Well, I guess we're all waiting for the new maps for DCS World.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So are we. Actually, very exciting.
Yeah.
I would say.
Have you seen them?
We've seen some more, I can say, and we're very excited. I mean, it's definitely going to, I don't know how to put it, push the simulator into a new era almost.
Yeah.
The rendering backend is also shifting from DirectX 9 to DirectX 11, and this is going to bring with it a lot of improvement in performance. And graphical fidelity, because you can use more complex shaders and so on. So essentially, I would reckon that DCS is going to see some major changes in the coming months.
I mean, the Straits of Hormuz map is obviously for the upcoming F-18. I mean,
it would seem that way.
Ideal for carrier operations, right?
Yep.
And then there's the long-awaited Nevada terrain, which I believe we all bought so many years ago. I mean, and it's finally coming up. I've seen the screenshots are just so impressive. Yeah. Tons and tons of buildings and.
Yeah, that's kind of the strength of moving from DirectX 9 to 11. The thing is that you can use a lot of techniques that are in use today to, for example, render more objects on screen, and that is something that is very inefficient on the current engine. So you should expect that to change a lot with DCS World 2.
Well, we look forward to it.
Yeah, so do we.
Very much. Thanks for coming, Nicholas.
Yep, thank you for having me, and thank you to everyone for supporting us.
See you later.
Yep.